greater efforts to bridge divergent interests. We cannot afford to have a military escalation. As we have emphasized before, the Minsk agreements provide a basis for a negotiated and peaceful settlement, and we need greater efforts to find common ground to facilitate the implementation of the provisions of the Minsk agreements, including key security and political aspects. As we have time and again emphasized, constructive diplomacy is the need of the hour to avoid scaling up of tensions. The safety and security of civilians are essential. More than 20,000 Indian students and nationals live and study in different parts of Ukraine, including in its border areas. The well-being of Indian nationals is of priority to us. In conclusion, we strongly emphasize the vital need for all sides to maintain international peace and security by exercising the utmost restraint and intensifying diplomatic efforts to ensure that a mutually amicable solution is arrived at the earliest. I thank you.
I thank the representative of India for his statement. I give the floor to the permanent representative of Brazil.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Let me start by thanking USG Rosemary DiCarlo for the updates she has brought to the Council tonight. Mr. President, when this organization was established in 1945, it entrusted the Security Council with the primary responsibility for the maintenance of international peace and security. Tension in and around Ukraine is being aggravated on a daily, indeed hourly, basis, making this habitual quotation from the Charter of extraordinary importance and relevance. We are all aware how critical the situation has become. Brazil is following the latest developments with extreme concern. In the present circumstance, we in this Council, in representation of the international community, must reiterate calls for immediate de-escalation and our steadfast commitment in support of political and diplomatic efforts to create the conditions for a peaceful solution to the crisis. The collective security system of the United Nations rests ultimately on the pillar of international law. This, in its turn, rests upon core principles enshrined in the Charter, the sovereign equality and the territorial integrity of member states, the restraint in the use or in the threat of use of force, and the peaceful settlement of disputes. Yet this pillar and principles will not yield results unless legitimate concerns of all parties are taken into consideration.
And that was the United Nations Security Council emergency meet on the Ukraine crisis. This after Russian President Vladimir Putin announced Donetsk and Luhansk as independent regions. India also took part in the meet, in which it expressed and said how de-escalation of tensions is the only way out, and said that securing long-term peace is paramount right now. India also asserted on how diplomacy is the only way out and military aggression is not an option, further highlighting on how constructive diplomacy is the need of the hour. India also said about the lives of the Indians in Ukraine, which is paramount for the country. Now, the emergency meet took place after Russian President Vladimir Putin recognized Ukraine's breakaway regions of Donetsk and Luhansk as independent, and said that he was confident that Russian citizens would support the decision. Meanwhile, at the UNSC meet, and for more on this, we are being joined by strategic political consultant Nicole Brenner-Schmitz from Washington, D.C. So, my first question to you is that with Putin recognizing Ukraine's breakaway provinces, will diplomacy still hold any ground in the Russia-Ukraine crisis?
It seems harder and harder to feel that that can be true, although this really shouldn't come as a surprise. This is what Putin has been after the entire time. It has been clear for a long time now that his goal is to invade this country, and that is what he has done. There is no way to sidestep this or call it something else. This is an invasion of a country into another country's recognized borders. That is what Putin has done tonight, and it needs to be addressed.
Well, so with the Western nations have also condemned Putin's actions in recognizing Ukraine's breakaway province and have vowed to impose sanctions. Now, what sanctions are we looking at here?
Well, the U.S. has been very clear that they will impose the most aggressive sanctions that they possibly can. I think we can look at full-scale economic sanctions coming from the West and from the U.S. on Putin. But again, this just should not be something that is a surprise to us. This is history repeating itself again and again. Putin is implementing a classic bait and switch here. He is pretending that he is in these areas for different reasons than he is. This is something we have seen dictators do before, and this is to be considered a full invasion from Russia into the Ukraine.
A violation of the territorial integrity and sovereignty of Ukraine, and inconsistent with the principles of the UN Charter. Third, to international law. The actions taken today make mockery of the commitments Russia has made through the Budapest Memorandum and the Minsk Agreements, endorsed by Security Council Resolution 2202. In seeking to redraw borders by force, Russia's actions show blatant contempt for international law. The United Kingdom will be announcing new sanctions on Russia in response to its breach of international law and attack on Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. There will be severe economic consequences to its actions. Colleagues, now more than ever, the Council must shoulder its responsibilities for peace and security and defend the principles of the UN Charter. The Council must be united in calling on Russia to de-escalate immediately, in condemning aggression against a sovereign nation and defending the territorial integrity of Ukraine, in calling on Russia to respect its obligations under the Charter to the peaceful resolution of disputes. Russia has brought us to the brink. We urge Russia to step back. I thank you.
I thank the representative of the United Kingdom for her statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Mexico.
President,
we are grateful for the briefing by the USG on the current situation in Ukraine. We are following with concern the recent developments.
Thanks for staying with us. Now, as we speak, the UN Security Council held an emergency meeting on Ukraine. And just now, the representative of United Kingdom has said that sanctions will be imposed, economic sanctions will be imposed on Russia. What more can you tell us?
I mean, it's exactly that. We're going to see the economic sanctions, and we've heard the U.S., both the administration and our Congress, the House and the Senate, say that they will be the most aggressive that we've ever seen. And that is the appropriate response back at what's happening right here. You heard her very clearly, and what she said is completely accurate. This is Putin with complete disregard for these agreements, complete disregard for the order, complete disregard for countries' geographic lines. The idea that he's going to stop here, if he is allowed to continue to invade a country, invade another country without consequence from the UN, means he will continue that path. This is a man who has an ego next to none, and who simply wants to be the most powerful human. And I say he wants back the old USSR, but presumably he even wants more than that. This is someone who is on a path to try and regain some kind of perceived former glory days of the Soviet. And it needs to be taken with the seriousness that it's been taken with. The UN is obviously Security Council meeting immediately this evening, because this pretense of peacekeeping and why his troops are there, it's untrue. And it's what we've seen, this bait and switch we've seen before of it's a pretense of why he's there. It's untrue. He's invading another country.
Right. So now, how do we expect things to unfold from here on, especially in the eastern side of Ukraine? Now, OSCE has reported massive spike in ceasefire violations in the last few days. What's your take on it?
I think it's unclear right now. I mean, he's certainly in a place where there's a lot of Russian separatists, so we can expect a degree of indifference amongst some of the population and some people who are maybe on the Russian side because of different dynamics that have happened in those areas since 2014. But this is certainly his way of creeping in closer and moving into the more of Ukraine. And rather than it just be a full-on attack from every side, he's doing it in a way that is in a place where he feels more comfortable. He's trying to posit it as peacekeeping. Obviously, the Russian media is portraying it as peacekeeping and as if the Ukraine was doing something on the offense. So this is a way of him not going a full board invasion from all sides, but it is still a path to invading Ukraine from all around. This is simply a different step than just invading from every border, but this is still his step to doing so. And I think what we can see tomorrow is the sanctions that the West will implement, and we will see what kind of reverberation those have.
Federation on the Minsk agreements, we heard from Deputy Minister Vershinen that the goal of that meeting was for the Security Council to affirm that there was no alternative to this milestone document. We believe that the Council did just that. Yet now, 4 days later, President Putin has decided to recognise as independent entities the non-government controlled areas of Donetsk and Luhansk, and to order troops into those two regions of Ukraine. This is the second time in less than 10 years that the Russian Federation has violated Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. It is a flagrant violation of international law. In taking this unilateral step, Russia has abandoned the Minsk agreements and cast into doubt all the diplomatic efforts of past weeks. Ireland commends Ukraine for the restraint it has shown in the face of Russia's military build-up at its border and the provocation of the recognition of the Donetsk and Luhansk regions. Ireland, along with our EU partners, supports a clear and unequivocal response to this violation of Ukraine's sovereignty. The Russian Federation's unilateral actions serve only to further raise tensions. Ireland once again calls for calm, de-escalation and the pursuit of diplomacy. Even if that call has not yet been heard, it's a call worth making again tonight. We need to see sustained and credible moves on the ground toward de-escalation of this crisis. We urge Russia to reverse the recognition, withdraw its military forces, and return to discussions within the Normandy format. Mr. President, all signatories of the Minsk agreements agreed on the need for the OSCE's special monitoring mission's safe and secure access to the entire territory of Ukraine. The mandate of the SMM was agreed by all 57 OSCE participating states. At this sensitive time, it is imperative that the SMM be given the full access agreed in its mandate. We commend those who have engaged in dialogue and urge them to redouble their efforts to seek a peaceful resolution to this perilous situation. We owe nothing less to the people of Ukraine. We call on all parties to ensure the protection of civilians, as well as refraining from any actions that would escalate the situation. Mr. President, Ukraine has already endured 8 years of bitter conflict with over 14,000 lives lost. The people of eastern Ukraine, in particular, have suffered from years of insecurity, humanitarian crisis, and human rights violations and abuses. This Council and its members have the responsibility to work to resolve this conflict, rather than yield to a grim new chapter which will inflict further misery on Ukraine and its people. This is the time to show the courage to pull back from the precipice and return to dialogue and diplomacy. Mr. President, we all need to demonstrate our faith in the value of diplomacy tonight. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Ireland for her statement. And I give the floor to the permanent representative of the United Arab Emirates.
Thank you, Mr. President. And at the outset, I'd like to thank Under-Secretary General for Political and Peacebuilding Affairs, Ms. Rosemary DiCarlo, for her updates and briefing this evening. And I'd like to refer to the statement that the UAE delivered in this chamber on 17th February on the same subject. I'd like to emphasize once again the importance of de-escalation and restraint to maintain regional and international security.
And that was the United Nations Security Council emergency meet on the Ukraine crisis after Russian President Vladimir Putin recognized the breakaway regions of Ukraine, that is Donetsk and Luhansk, as independent regions. The representatives of all the countries urged on how diplomacy is the only way out and asserted on how military aggression cannot take place at this hour. Meanwhile, sanctions have been imposed. United Kingdom announced new sanctions against Russia, further warning of severe economic consequences.